just one quick thing to get things,
Yeah.
quick 180. I wanted to go a little technical. Now we went kind of
Okay.
personal. Now
Yeah,
I'll
no
go a
worries.
little technical. All right. Anki. Okay, Anki. So
Yeah, yeah.
for me, I do not doubt the effectivity of Anki. I
Yep.
was in Spanish high school, we had to do flashcards, and I was doing those flashcards like crazy, and I remember that vocabulary. I've,
Yep.
let's say, dabbled in Anki, but I'm like one of those guys that have never been able to make it stick because
Yep.
there's always something I would rather be doing in that language. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yep.
And I find that, okay, if I'm going to do this, it needs to be like the first thing I do in the language. But the problem for me is that, okay, there's some days that maybe, let's say I could say from anywhere from 1 to 3 hours a day, 1 to 2, 2.5, one on like on a low side. But let me say a day that like I can only do like something comes up in the day and I have to leave or something
Yep.
like that. And it's like
Yep.
since I'm trying to do Enki every day.
Mhm.
Like I don't want that to be like the thing that I do. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I tell
Yep.
myself, oh, then maybe I'll do it at the end of the night before I go to bed. But it's just like whatever. What do you think
Yep.
it is about Enki that just makes it like so? I mean, no one doubts it, but it's kind of unappealing in terms of the broader language scope. You know what I mean?
Well, I think some people do doubt it,
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of people don't get what the people who have used it very effectively. Again, I'm talking about Matt and Sharma. I think he used it like heaps. The people who have used it very effectively, the people who doubt it don't understand what they were doing with it. They weren't sitting there drilling the language into their mind. They're reminding themselves that certain words or phrases exist so that when they hear those words or phrases in their content, in their immersion, that they go, oh yeah, that one. Like it just because you can't listen out for everything. If you're watching a series, and there's like, I don't know how many words per episode of a series, it might be a couple of thousand. You can't listen out for every little thing, especially when you're engaged in the content. So Anki is just like an artificial way to get your brain to go like, this is important. Just like, so it's
Right.
like some people call it like the blue car effect, and I think it's actually called like frequency bias, which is like, you're considering buying a certain kind of Mazda, and then suddenly you see that car everywhere. You think everyone's driving. You
That's so
see
interesting,
everyone
that
driving
concept. Yep.
Mazdas, right? It's totally real concept. And it's like actually annoying in real life because it gives you the idea that like things are happening that aren't happening. You're like, oh, everyone's buying Mazdas now. It's like, no, that's not what. It's just your brain is noticing them. It's using that, but for positive, to the positive effect of like this word varlig in Swedish. Suddenly that's like an important word where your brain was just kind of going, oh, I think I vaguely get that, or like, oh, I get what's happening in this scene.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then suddenly you're going, like you're seeing it every a day, and then every second day, and then every fifth day, and your brain's going, this is important. So I think the people who don't doubt Anki don't understand that that's what it's actually for. I think obviously the natural interface, if you haven't changed it on Anki, doesn't help. It's got like, I made the joke in my video. I'm assuming you watched my video about Anki,
Mm-hmm.
right? Yeah, I made the joke that it's like Arial narrow black. It's actually not. It's an even more boring font than that. But yeah, like the interface doesn't help. But I think mainly what I realized that I didn't like about it was that I didn't understand what the mechanics of it. Like I didn't know what was going on behind the scenes, and for that reason, something like a gold list or just a list or even on my wall or something made more sense, because I was like, okay, it's inferior in that I'm not seeing things in like an optimized way, but at least I know exactly what's happening. So for that reason, I like something like Lingvist that actually, it's basically almost tells you how many times more that you're going to see that word before it deems that you won't forget that word. But Lingvist isn't nearly as customizable as Anki. And then there's just all these, like, there's all these terms and uh, I thought that they were like native terms to Anki, as in that they were like, so it's got like the ease factor. And I'm not even sure if that's an add-on, like if that's because I've got some of the add-ons that um, Matt and Yoga developed back in the day, or that like now have been. So like there's all, it's like just such a complicated program, and nothing's named what it like what it seems like it should be named. Like what's an ease factor? What does that even mean? It's like, okay, yeah, you can start to appreciate it, but it's almost like you have to learn a small other language before you even appreciate what Anki is doing. But here's an irony of that video. There's a massive irony that I haven't yet revealed on my channel about that video. I'd been doing Anki for about a month when I made that video, like every day, and I was like, yep, this is good, like just a small amount every day, no more than 10 minutes. And then that video had some complicated graphics in it that really stressed my graphics processor in my computer. And but I'd already put them in, and so in order to even finish the video, I had to order a new graphics card. And this is getting well off language learning now, but like anyone who's tried to order a graphics card lately knows that there's been some complications with this, to put it lightly. As in it's to do with Bitcoin mining, and there's like people using graphics card. Anyway, they're complicated. I finally got one. I put it in, it worked fine. I did the video, exported it and everything. But that graphics card then gave me other problems with my computer that led to the eventual complete crash of my computer. That meant I needed to reinstall Windows. I reinstalled Windows. I backed stuff up. I had to wait a bit to get the right equipment and whatever. I backed stuff up. I then realized that one thing I had not backed up was my Anki decks. Wow. And I was like, I was just getting into Anki and I've lost all the work that I put in making cards. Now, thankfully, this wasn't thousands of cards. It was like a bit under 300 cards. Right. And I was like, I can redo this, but it's more just like with the add-ons I had and the code that I had to make it not be white and like my own font and everything. It was all a bit complicated. And then even worse than that, when I did install Anki, I was like, okay, let's get back to it. It's been a couple of weeks break, but I installed Anki and it just didn't work. Like it just literally, it's like, yep, the installation worked, but then I went to use Anki and it was like, cannot run script anki.dll or whatever. I was like, okay, Anki hates me now. All right, whatever. And it just didn't work. And then for some reason, one day it just did work. I just saw it again. I was like, oh, I'll just see if this thing's working. And it worked. And then I discovered that actually I hadn't thought that I'd backed up my Anki things, but it had luckily been in a folder that did happen. I did happen to back up. I didn't even know that Anki does this, but now I love it so much more that it does. It actually, whenever you like open it for the day and close it, it creates a backup of like where it was up to. And so I opened up this backup. I was like, oh, what's this Anki backup from like the last day that I'd used it? And it basically wipes your current setup, which at the time was nothing, because like it wipes your current setup and puts it back to whatever it was then, which reinstated my decks basically. So there's still a bit of work to do in terms of to get it to be like my nice color and the nice font and everything, which is actually more important to me than the decks, because I can't stand looking at what is called vanilla Anki. But yeah, that's the irony of it, was that video that was me ranting about Anki caused the entire breakdown of everything. And for a while I was genuinely considering just going, you know what, this is not meant to be. Like exactly. I'm not meant to be an Anki user. Like
from the universe.
Yeah. But
who do you think you are? Anki,
yeah. But it's back, and for the moment I'm using it in vanilla Anki, but it just and I've got a bit of catching up to do. So it's lucky I was only doing 2 words a day, because now my like what's it called, the reps that I have to do for today is like 80, not 700, because I missed like 2 weeks. Yeah, so that I think, but I didn't answer your question. I think it's mainly that people don't understand how to set it up.
Mm.
I think you need add-ons to get it to do anything. Even Matt says, like, back when he was first using it, it's actually a really inefficient algorithm as it stands. And if you've got the
Wow.
four, well, if you've got the four options, so one of their add-ons that I had was to make it just two options, just yes or no. Do you remember it or not? But if you've got the four options, one of them, which is when you say, "Oh, I got that, but it was hard," that actually jets the card like long into the future, which is the opposite of what it should do.
Mm.
If you're saying it's hard, it should show you again like tomorrow or the next day.
Mm-hmm.
And uh, yeah, and I think just everything combined means that it's just that. But as someone pointed out on my channel recently, that they're like, it seems to be the curse of language learning software that it's either really, really effective, um, and horribly designed, or a nice design but not that great, like
Oh yeah.
Duolingo on one end and Anki on the other, kind of thing.
This is one problem I haven't had to deal with. Like, I'm such like a computer technology basic guy that,
Mhm.
people complain about the interface of Anki, and for me, I'm like, whatever, it's whatever. People said the same
Yeah,
thing about Link for me. It's like, what? I'm like, whatever, So
yeah,
for me, I guess this thing doesn't really bother me. So I guess,
okay, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I don't know exactly know what it is, because with some stuff I don't care about design, but like, I don't know. I feel like I've kind of turned myself into someone I don't like, in that, like, I care more about design than like, we like in my 20s. I feel like I would have been like, oh, why do you even care?
That's what
Um,
I say
yeah,
to me.
I don't know. But also, I just want to point out, well, for anyone watching this who's the whole spaced repetition algorithm, Anki is not like unique. It's not. They all use a similar or the same algorithm. Um, so it's not like Anki's got like a special algorithm that makes it better. Um, and it's not even that the algorithm of like how often you see the cards and whatnot is even very special. It's I think it's something like 90% of that blue car effect is made just by you being reminded that it exists every now and then. It doesn't actually matter, even if it's some extremely obscure word that you mightn't see for like a year. If you see it three times that year, that's probably enough for it to be more effective in your immersion, even if you can't remember exactly what it means. So
Exactly.
if you're there going, nah, I just hate Anki, I can't deal with it, or whatever, just write lists of words. Like, write lists and put them on your wall and look at a different one every day, um, or just do physical flashcards and just like jumble them up in random order. You don't even have to worry about this card was good or, and if you feel like you know it, then just chuck it out.
Right.
And it makes that, just that is like 90% of the effect of Anki. So you can get 90% without even doing Anki.
Exactly. So recently on Twitter, Met versus Japan tweeted something. He said, I can't believe people are still doubting the comprehensible input
Mm.
hypothesis."
Yep,
And for me, I saw that on Twitter and I wanted to be like, dude, like, who doubts that? You know what I mean?
lots of
And
people.
I was like, who doubts that? Like, who? I mean, come on. But I remembered a video that was released some weeks before that I saw. And I kind of like, I feel like the language community is like almost on two spectrums, like very lovey-dovey. And then there's some other people that are just like, oh, this is trash. I'm discovering fake polyglots. This person is
Mhm,
garbage. So like,
mhm,
it's like these things. But I like balanced debate. I love kind of when two people go at it.
mhm.
I always love that. I feel like there should be kind of more of this in the language learning community. But there was that guy who says, "Oh, the myth of comprehensible inputs," and
Yep,
I'm like, okay, I'm definitely gonna watch this,
yep.
and hmm, I go, all right, this is interesting. I mean, I disagree with a lot, but
Mhm,
mm, long story short, this kind of analyzing video, like for example, you did with I Can, and what's his name? Nathaniel Drew is his name?
Yep, yep.
I love that kind of stuff. For me, that's just like awesome. And I thought, oh, maybe I could do something like that. But I just completely forgot about it. So I was so glad when you decided to talk about it, because I'm like, oh, I completely forgot about that. And plus, I knew from your video about these two guys that it was going to be good. So it just was released the other day. It came out, and I'm like, oh, there it is. Apparently, there's more parts. But in the first video, you said something that like kind of made me think, because I came into this language world, like I came off on the right foot, like just hit the ground running, because literally the people that I found were Moses, Steve, Luca, and like those guys are about work, Steve's about input, Luca as well. Moses knew how to learn the language perfectly fine, or how to take a language to a high level, but he did input for, let's say, 3 months. He tried to speak it, and served his purposes, but he was never in denial about how languages are learned. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yep.
So I came off like getting a really great education on the whole topic of language learning. But then I tried to, like, you said something like, not everyone knows about this. And for me, I'm like, I had to think about it. I'm like, who are these people? And in your video, you mentioned something like there's 3 types of language learners. One who does it at school, one who like the group that believes in, inputs. Then what was the other one?
So as a speak early approach. So I think there are 3 schools of thought, and it's like people say, well, don't they overlap? And it's like, yeah, they do overlap, but I think the 3 schools of thought are very different in what they say is important. So the input school says like, input is the most important, and it's what the majority of your time should be spent on. The speak early school of thought says that it's speaking that's important, because then you overcome this nervousness that you're going to have about speaking. You get that out of the way really early. And the like sort of grammar and like school of thought is basically stuck in this idea that like, if I tell you that the capital of New Zealand is Wellington, and then I ask you right now what the capital of New Zealand is, then you can tell me it's Wellington. And so they're stuck on this idea that languages are like facts. And it's like, it's true. Like in theory, you could have enough facts in your head about a language that you could then perfectly speak that language. But you're never going to be able to do it at the speed that's required. Like you could, like facts can help you to work things out. Like if you know that it's always going to be this in whatever, in a certain language, then you can go, no, that doesn't sound right. And then like I do that in English. Like I know, actually, why doesn't that sound right? And then go, oh, I guess we would technically have to say this. And then I always decide that the sentence is so clumsy that I'm just going to say it a different way. So facts can help. So, but that's where at some, I kind of associate it with like, I don't know, the 60s, this like school of like, if I teach you all the things about French, then you will speak French kind of thing. And that's just, I'm going to say that's not how it works. It's more like you get taught all the things about French through constantly hearing French. So that's what I was saying. I'm not saying that they don't overlap. I was saying that they've got very different emphases on what is important.
Right. And I think in your second video, you're going to address this more, but just like a basic rundown, what do you think is wrong with his hypothesis, or what is the thing that you dislike the most about what he's communicating to what will be quite a lot of people?
As in what Christian from Canguro English is communicating? So yeah, in the second video, I talk about how he's misunderstood acquisition versus learning. He seems to think that acquisition is like where you just sit back and acquire it and you never actually have to speak it. And he even says like, imagine if a school told you, I will teach you to acquire knowledge but not actually speak it. I'm like, no one's saying that, dude. Acquisition is a term, and I actually mentioned this in the video, it's a term used to divide something where we don't previously have a division. And that's that difference that I just spoke about. It's like acquisition is the difference between telling you that the capital of New Zealand is Wellington, or you living in New Zealand, and every time you have to go to Parliament or to the government, you have to drive to Wellington. And so no one's ever told you that the capital of New Zealand is Wellington. But then when someone asks you one day, like, what's the capital of this country? Is it Auckland? Because that's the biggest city, so that's what everyone thinks it is. You go, nah, because every time I go to the government, it's in Wellington, so it's got to be Wellington, right? This is a really weird example, but it's really the only thing that I think is learned through like teaching you information is that, like, in facts, not even maths. Like, people use this analogy of like, oh, like you can just teach someone about. Well, no, because like, for example, my mother doesn't understand why two negatives multiplied by each other makes a positive. She's like, she thinks it's just some rule that someone came up with, that like, just because like they decided that that's what it should be. Well, no, that is actually correct. But understanding maths on a deep level would be to understand like, well, if you owe someone money, then that's negative money that you have. And if you owe someone money and then like by a negative number of times somehow, then they actually owe you money. So it does work out. Two negatives really do make a positive. And so I'm getting a little bit off topic here, but like that's what acquisition means. It's this thing of like hearing so much Swedish or so much Spanish that when you come to produce it, certain things just feel right, and people sort of, it sounds iffy, and people go, oh, can you really do that? Well, that's what you've done in your native language, right? That's why if I say to you, I stopped to go to parties, technically that is correct, except everyone would go, there's no way you could actually do that. How do you stop it in order to go to parties? Because that's what I stopped to go to parties means. I think you mean I stopped going to parties, right? And it's like, yeah, right. And so, and there's other examples where it's just wrong. It's not even technically correct. But a lot of the time stuff is...
Interesting example.
Yeah,
I like that.
A lot of the time stuff is technically correct, but doesn't mean what you think it means. So like, I stopped to go to parties. I stopped to get in the car. That's like, I walked past the car and then I stopped to get into the car. It's like, that's correct. But English speakers or native English speakers or high level English speakers just know intuitively. They hear something that doesn't sound right and they go, that's wrong. And they're not unsure. They're like, I may not know what is correct, but I know that that is not correct. And that's what acquiring a language is. It's hearing it and understanding it so much that when someone says something, and like, this is basic, this is where my Swedish has gotten to. So when I listen to non-native Swedish speakers speak Swedish, they say stuff, I'm like, nah, that's not what you meant. Or that's just wrong. Like genders, for example, I've never studied Swedish genders, but I don't think that there's a noun that I use there's no noun that I would use in conversation that I don't know the gender of. So, and I hear it all the time in people who've like studied the language in this factual way or just spoken early and not had a lot of comprehensible input. They say like, ja, jag skulle gå till min hus. And I'm like, whoa, mitt hus, dude. Like, it sounds totally wrong. It sounds almost as wrong to me as it does to a native speaker. They've heard mitt hus their whole life. Okay, I haven't heard it my whole life, but I've heard it for the last 4 years. It's mitt hus, and it's like, you know, that's what it means to acquire the language. It's not the difference between sitting, and that's I've sort of given away the video, but that's fine. Like, it's not sitting just listening and going, oh yes, now I know the language. No, it's knowing the language in order to then produce it. I
really like the arguments, and the thing that, you know, I love a good debate. I love these kind of like hot takes or whatever, but the thing that I didn't like about the video is because I think that it's kind of almost giving people permission to do what they kind of already want to do, which is like not put in the massive effort that it takes to really learn a language. You don't need to worry about this input thing. Don't worry about that. And it's like,
Well,
eh.
yeah. Well, I think Christian would say the opposite because he's all about hard work, and he says in tons of his videos that it takes like 30 years to learn a language.
Oh, okay.
Um, but the thing the thing is, I think he thinks it takes 30 years because like to get an if you're not focused on input and you're not focused on like noticing things in the way native speakers talk, then it does take 30 years to just naturally get that much exposure to it. But by that stage, there's so many things that you'll say, like assuming you live in the country, and you're not just doing 30 years of just weird input. I don't know. By that stage, there's going to be so many things that you're just in this habit of saying that are wrong or in some way strange. And so it's like, yeah, I don't disagree with Christian that it probably does take 30 years if that's not your focus, if you just go to the country and you live your life, and that's totally fine. But I think in that case, you're going to end up like a friend of mine I work with who is Venezuelan, who has lived here for like 12 years. And that's like, she's not even that old. So I think she's only about 29. So she's lived here since she was 17, right? So she would, and her English, I'm sorry to be rude to her, but it sucks. Like, it's like she just says all this stuff over and over again. It's like, you actually can't say that, but it doesn't matter how much you correct her now because she's just been saying this for 12 years. And I feel like I love her. Like, I think she's great. She's got that super vibrant Venezuelan personality. But I feel like saying to her, Alex, have you never noticed that no one says that? That's only you. Like,
well, we all have
like,
a personal way of talking, Lamont.
yeah. And she also says stuff that like no one understands because in our work we talk to a lot of new people every day. Like, and she also says this stuff that all the people go, sorry, sorry. And it's like, have you not noticed that every time you say that, no one knows what the heck you're talking about?
We were six at the party.
Yeah. And it's like, because she's just got this idea that if she just keeps talking and keeps living here, she'll get better. It's like, well, it hasn't gotten better after 12 years. I don't. So I think Christian's just a bit mistaken in what acquisition means, and it doesn't take 30 years because otherwise, Matt wouldn't speak the insane level of Japanese that he has. Who are some others? Well, Shalma isn't even 30 years old. And there's I don't know, there's tons of others who speak their language really well. Claudia, she started learning Swedish when she was 18, and by the time she was 25, she had been teaching it for a while then. Like, it doesn't take 30 years. So, yeah.
Cool. All right. So I want to do kind of like a power round because just to kind of start wrapping it up. So I want to give you some questions, and we don't need to go so in depthly like we've gone in these previous questions.
I find that hard to do, but yeah.
Me too. I'm trying to be very respectful of the time, so I'm going
to... don't worry about me. I'm having fun, actually.
Oh, thanks, man, because I think, all right, my interviews have been basically right at an hour, and that's like all that I needed.
Yeah.
I noticed some of your interviews, basically they've gone to like 90 minutes. I thought, okay, so the longest I was like 90 minutes. I'm gonna, try to.
Yeah.
All right, wonderful. Now I feel a little more at ease to continue going. So, like I make no qualms about it. For me, like the contribution that Steve Kaufman has made to language learning thoughts over the last 15 years, for me is absolutely astounding. Like, I have watched that man's content more than any other language guy's content for a very long time. I find him absolutely inspiring in the way, so many aspects of language he talks about, and the attitude as well. So if someone were to ask me, who is like your language learning hero? For me, there wouldn't even be a doubt. It would be Steve. What about that for you?
I think it's probably not going to be a surprise to most people who know me that it's going to be Matt.
Hmm.
But it wasn't initially.
I thought you would say that.
Initially, it was probably Luca. I well, actually, if we go from the very start, it was Benny Lewis, and I know that now people are a bit like, oh, Benny
But a
Lewis,
lot of people get
but
into the language thing through him.
yeah, exactly. Like I read his book Fluent in 3 months, and
Oh, you did?
it's not that I was like, yeah, I'm going to be fluent in 3 months. It was that at that point I'd been doing Swedish on Duolingo for 4 weeks, and I was one of those people who was like, I need a native speaker to talk to. That's what I need. Swedes don't live in Australia. It turns out I was wrong. Lots of Swedes live here, but
I'm surprised, by the way. I'm
yeah.
really surprised with all this that you're telling me. I'm like, Lamont has like no Swedes at practice. So it turns out there's
Yeah.
schools. I mean, come on.
Yeah, well, they love the warm weather, man. They're all about it. Like they'll have to like disappear during our winter because that's of no interest to them. Anyway, it's meant to be a power round. So I read his book. I was like, oh, there's this thing called italki. Like that sounds awesome, and I did that, not paying teachers, just like doing like one for one swapping time with Swedes. So those very generous Swedes who were swapping time for my English, despite the fact that they already spoke English. Um, so yeah, there was Benny initially, and then Luca. And I think what impressed me about Luca was like uh, the level. Even though I couldn't really assess, I did. I sent it to a few like uh, French friends and stuff who are like, yeah, his French is really good, and I could tell his English was good. Like as soon as I heard him, I was like,
Oh,
okay, he's not a native speaker, I don't think, but it.
right.
So when I found out that his native language was Italian, I was like, damn, this guy's amazing because the Italian, the normally talk like this, like um, and so yeah, Luca initially, and it was actually only in about kind of January of 2020 that I discovered Matt, and it was his interview with Steve. It wasn't
My
like
that was my
yeah,
introduction to Matt too.
yeah. It wasn't a single moment for me. It's not like I saw it and went, right, that's it. I'm following this guy. But I think that planted the seed of like, holy crap, that was not like when they switched into Japanese at the end, and it's not, I could tell it wasn't scripted from Matt because he had this sort of hesitant period right at the start, and then Steve says something else, and then Matt says something that just goes for ages and just seems so idiomatic, and the way he's using his hands and stuff is like, I don't study Japanese, but some of my cousins speak it to a very high level,
Ooh.
and like the way that he was using his hands and stuff and going like, and I was like, this is insane, man. And so that's when I kind of started going, oh, maybe I'll see what this guy has to say. And then seeing some of his videos that are like quite technical about like how acquisition versus learning works and stuff.
Mm.
And it's all a very slow, like as I said in my first video, it's actually quite a counterintuitive thing that he's saying. It's like you don't get better at it through speaking
Mm.
because you don't understand it. And so it took me a while to come round to it. And even when I interviewed him in March last year, I was kind of trying to say, well, speaking early did work for me. It's like there's work and work. There's work as in it functioned and it functioned. As like it didn't work to the same level as his Japanese, which is of course a much harder language as well. So
Mhm.
that's when I started kind of going, okay, this guy like knows what he's talking about. Um, and so yeah, and also just the level to which he has produced his videos has been something that's inspired me, like his sort of documentary style with
Mm.
like different B-roll and stuff. Um, and I think he's actually quite a good YouTuber on top of being excellent at his language. So that's something I've focused on recently is like I make no what's the word? I make no illusion to like I have no illusions of like only being into studying Swedish and doing that all the time. I actually work really hard on my videos,
Got it.
um, because I like it. I just enjoy producing a video that I'm proud of, um, and so yeah, that's what I've been focusing on. So Matt is the answer, but it
Cool.
went through Benny to Luca to Matt.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, Steve in terms of theory, Luca in terms of inspiration. Well, okay, let me change that. Luca, you know, he speaks like all these languages, and you know, people either say he sounds like a native or oh, that's near native, and it's like
Mhm.
like that's really impressive. And you see that, you know, I'm sure that there's varying degrees of talent in language learning. And in
Mhm.
my opinion, we can call him someone with a higher level of talent, but the effort is still there. It's like Kobe
Mhm.
Bryant, who was incredibly talented, but worked, like outworked everyone.
Mhm.
Like you still
Yeah.
see Luca like studying, you know, like that passion's there. That's really cool. And
Yeah.
I used to like, well, of course I still like it, Moses' channel, because like for me, it was always really exciting to watch him. And like if I needed a little like motivation hit, like I could watch one of his videos and I could remember, you know, very clearly, see a very clear example of why, you know, one would want to learn languages in the first place. It's the human connection. And I mean,
Mm.
nothing, that's what Moses's videos really showed, because people broke down and cried when, you know, he spoke Bosnian to them. You know,
Mm.
like
Yeah.
it's beautiful. And so
Mm.
it's a really interesting time, you know. I mean, I think we have like all those old kind of heroes, and then there's like a new group, and you know, they add in their 2 cents. For me, it's really great, and you know, I try to take things uh, from anyone where I can. You know, I'm not
Mhm.
dogmatic. I'm like, no, I can't do that.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't think like that. Man, I'll take something from anyone, you know, that I think is really good, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
But it's also
Yeah.
kind of nice to see where you disagree with people, because I think one of the interesting things about learning language is not only learning the language, it's becoming more developed in your thoughts about
Yeah.
language learning.
Yeah.
So I'll propose this question to you.
Mhm.
You and your personal language learning growth thoughts, where do you diverge from Matt's train of thought, or the whole, you know, that whole realm of language learning? Because for me, I consider it a bit different. Like the comprehensible camp, the comprehensible
Mhm.
English camp, and like
Yeah.
the mass immersion, or the, you know,
Oh,
this
yeah.
style, right? So
Yeah.
what
Well, I
would you
mean,
say?
the obvious one is that as someone in their 30s with two kids and
Uh-huh.
trying to make something out of like getting an online business going and stuff, like the amount of time that Matt devoted to Japanese when he was a teenager and in his early 20s is completely impossible. Um,
Absolutely right.
so like, I mean, if I like, and also the other thing that needs to be said is that like, even if I did devote that amount of time to Swedish for like 2 years, there's every chance that I wouldn't end up as good as him because he was so young.
Yep.
The English hadn't made as big of an impression yet, and so there's all that. Um, so I guess, but like, he's not denying that these days. He spends a lot of time on Refold, and
Mm.
so his Chinese has progressed slowly, and he's made no secret about that. Um, but yeah, I would just say that like that's not for everyone. However, what it did get me to do was to really consider how much time you do actually have, because I think that most of us are just
Of course.
really amazing at wasting time,
Oh
basically.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like, and I'm constantly trying to push it these days to the point that like, um, oh, for a little while I was doing like a bit of Croatian on drops because like I was like, there's nothing else you can do with like this 8 minute gap between
Yeah.
between like my shower and dinner or something like that. There's
Right.
like nothing, or like just literally, and it's like, drops is not the only thing that can do that, but like just like little things,
Yep.
and you never know what stuff's going to turn into. And another one, your channel is getting all sorts of announcements from my personal life recently, but
Really? Oh wow.
another one is like I've been practicing the piano, and it's not like the piano is not new to me, but it's been many, many, many years since I've actually practiced the piano or even had a piano to practice on. Um, so I've been practicing that because that's something where like those 8 minutes a day or 15 minutes a day, that adds up, man.
Oh my
Like,
God.
like,
Absolutely.
um, um, yeah, especially if you've got a base in it already, like I do. And like now I'm all about deliberate practice, which is like often considered this really it's not as fun as just playing songs, but I'm like, I only have 15 minutes, so I'm just gonna I will now proudly spend 15 minutes, proudly and happily spend 15 minutes just working on a part of a piece that I can't play because it's too freaking hard.
Uh-huh.
And like, if I just play this and I don't even play the rest of the piece, like the parts that I can play, I'll worry about those once I've gotten these bits that are too hard, because then I'll be able to put the whole thing together. So it's almost like taking the comprehensible input approach and like, or the deliberate practice kind of approach, and putting it into something entirely different. Because like, I don't know that I'm all, like, where can you really go in life speaking Swedish unless you move to Sweden? Whereas like, if you become someone who speaks really good Swedish and also plays the piano and also makes videos, like who knows what's the future can hold. So I forget how I even started talking about that. Where I would differ from Matt. Yeah, so you can't. I would differ from his approach in that I'd say you just can't put that much time into one thing. And also, if you are going to put that much time into one thing, languages might not be the best thing for that, for an English speaker at least, and certainly not a language like Swedish where most of them speak English. That's just kind of cool to do that. It's not necessarily useful. And Matt admits that as well. He's like, I would trade my Japanese ability for other things if I could. But and another little, this is more a technical thing, and I think he's actually just abbreviating when he says this. But when he says that like people who speak early will always be like speaking a version of the language that where they're kind of translating. And I think he's abbreviating, but also he doesn't actually know because he never did that. And why would he? Because his approach, I would say, is superior. But that's not true. I did get both my Swedish and my French to the point that like they were in Swedish and in French as I spoke them. But he's right in that there's anything you come across that you can't say, you have to kind of go, well, in English, I would say this. So can you say this in French? But he talks about this idea of having alarm bells going off in your head if you're saying something that you're not sure can be said. And I would have that all the time. Like, as in, at least I knew that I was saying, so I was like, can you say this kind of thing? So I think it's a very inefficient approach, but I don't think you're always translating. And there are a lot of people who spoke early,
yes,
but then have been, as long as they've remained aware of where they differ from native speakers, they have actually reached a very high level.
right.
So it can be done, but I think it's more about remaining aware through the whole process and going like, wait, what? I said that. No one says that. Like,
and you mentioned the example of your Venezuelan
yeah.
coworker, and I mean, I'm sure she keeps on making the same mistakes because maybe her level of input is just like what she hears around her. It's really not enough. She needs a lot more. She's probably really connected with her family, Spanish all the time.
Oh yeah, she was like, if she was a Spanish learner, she would be like she would be an inspiration because she was dead. So in our work, there's a lot of like 15-minute blocks and then like 10-minute waits, and 15-minute blocks and 10-minute waits. And she would be like on WhatsApp, speaking Spanish to her friends. Like, they would leave her a message and then she would record a message. It's
Hola,
like
amiga.
it was literally it was like she was all Spanish all the time, except for work. Like,
exactly.
and I know, I like, if she's doing that at work, imagine what she's doing at home. Like, she spent all her life in Spanish that wasn't for work. So
Right. So no wonder
which
it's
is like,
like that, you know what I mean? And it makes me think like, I recently was on an interview and I said that, I'm an input guy, but, I also don't have any kind of like, I don't think that I need to wait to any particular moment to speak. I think that's I don't like that idea, right? I
yeah.
just let the speaking emerge, and I'm not worried about fossilization. I said that, like, I'm doing input work. So if I do have mistakes in explaining myself in any given moment, then I think that the input just going to take care of that through time. So I'm not worried about speaking, you know, at whatever point. I let it come out as best as it can, and through time, things get kind of put in their place. Maybe you've had a similar experience being a person who spoke early, but then did a lot of inputs.
Yeah. Yeah, I do think it can result in, speaking early can result in habits, but habits, I think the difference between fossilization and habits is that fossilization is when basically, knowingly or not, you've reached a point that you're not willing to change. And that can be anything. Like, you will hear people say that about anything. Like, you know, could you quit coffee? And it's like, oh no, I could never quit coffee. It's like, well, you could, because there was a time in your life that you didn't drink coffee, and also lots of people around the world have never drunk coffee, or they've quit coffee, or they've quit cigarettes, something much more addictive than coffee. They've quit like illicit drugs that are super addictive, right? People have quit stuff. Like, you can do it. So like, it's just that speaking is such an automatic thing that we do, to the point that it is very hard to change stuff. But I've changed stuff about my English. I've become aware that I've said things wrong. Someone pointed out to me that saying the Ukraine is actually regarded as a bit of a slight on that country, because it's something to do with, like, the president said we should no longer be called that because we're not a part of Russia. And I was like, I was never aware that everyone in Australia says that. No one knows that it's a slight. We just think it's called that. And also, I have Ukrainian heritage, so I'm not being racist, right?
Against your own heritage.
But,
you know?
so then every time I said the Ukraine, I was like, it's actually Ukraine. And so it is hard to adjust, but you can adjust. So I think that's the difference between fossilization, is when you're just going, no, I'm not. And even if you do that subconsciously, I'm not changing. But I do notice things in my Swedish that I still just say out of habit. And the longer I go between speaking and the more input I have, the more I say stuff that I surprise myself, like, wow, I didn't even know I could say that. Like, and so, yeah, I think it's just a matter of, I'm the same. I don't think and that's going back to where I would disagree with Matt. I don't think there's a point that it's necessarily that you can't talk. And I think when he spoke to that Japanese singer on his channel, I think that guy actually spoke fairly early. So Matt says that guy is the best Western speaker of Japanese he's ever come across, including Dogen and including himself. And I'm pretty sure that guy spoke like before he was that good at Japanese. But then I asked Matt a question about that, and he said, well, I think what makes that guy so good is just that he never stops analyzing the difference between himself as a native speaker. He never stops being curious, as like, wait, is that what I say? Like, so there comes a point where you might even be happy to accept that you say something a little bit weird, and that natives just go, oh, that's just his thing that he says. And you know, you might be, but most people never get anywhere near the point that they can even make that decision. They're always just saying stuff that's all of it's weird. Yeah.
I had an interesting moment a couple of weeks ago. I woke up I teach English, so I woke up for my class, and there was no internet at home. I go, oh my gosh, the
world is ending.
You start to feel a lot of pressure. Well, I had like this really like business woman, and I was trying to see what's going on the internet. I turned on my phone. I saw that she's like, oh, you better let's cancel this class, and being not so nice. And I was like, don't worry, I'll do whatever, no problem, whatever. And I said, I'm going to take a nap. I'm going to wake up 30 minutes before I had a Russian English exchange. But I misjudged the time. And when I woke up, basically the girl was like, you ready? And I'm like, oh my gosh. And I said, I'm so sorry. Look, give me 15 minutes. I'm going to go to a Starbucks, and we're going to at least do your session, because let's forget mine. we're going to do your session because I take these
Yep.
things seriously, right?
Hmm.
So I go there, I do my session English, and she was nice enough to tell me that we could do the Russian. And it was
Hmm.
like, for me, like, oh, damn, because like I always have the Russian session first so I can like struggle it out,
Yeah.
do my best, and then get to the English and then feel like comfortable and feel calm and know that I'm helping this girl out.
Yeah.
Because that like, unless you're like relatively fluent, I'm able to communicate on that, but I know I'm
Mm.
making my errors in that. Maybe it's not the easiest thing for the other person. Like you're aware of that, right?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So I had the urge just to call and said, no, let's forget about it. Like I had that inkling in me just saying, oh, but you know, I just I just made a video about how we need to take opportunities to push ourselves out of our boundaries, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
kind of like my own video basically reflected back at me, helped me. I went through it with the class and everything was fine. But you have these little seeds of doubt, you get
Mm.
nervous, and like I'm so glad that I did it. My question for you is, has any of your advice actually reflected back at you and helped you when you needed it?
Um, I feel like the answer is yes, but it's going to be hard to come up with an
Mm,
example. I think, um, yeah, I think probably the most was at the end of 2019. I came across Lana Blakely's video. For people who don't know Lana Blakely, she's kind of the female Swedish version of Matt Diavella. Um,
oh,
but I didn't know she was Swedish at the time because she spoke such perfect English. I think I thought I was like, oh, she sounds like she's grown up in America and just maybe had like one foreign parent or something.
mm,
Um, in that video, there are other videos where she speaks Swedish like quickly, but in that video, and she had gone to the gym every day for like 90 days, and I at that time I then got inspired to do that in French because I was really focusing on French. I
okay.
was like, I'm gonna do 250 hours of French before the end of the year, which was like 90 days away. So so it was like close to 3 hours a day. Um, and I got very near to actually achieving that at the time. And so someone commented on that video maybe a month or two ago and saying, "Yeah, this is really inspiring" or whatever. And I'm like, okay, well, even though it's in now my opinion, a bad video in terms of like the production value and everything, and it's about French, a language that I openly do not focus on or speak anymore. Um, I can have it that got me inspired. It's like I used to consider 3 hours a day a lot, but doable. And lately, I don't even consider it that much, but I also don't do it that often
Mhm.
because, like, I I read in a book recently, what is easy to do is also easy to not do. Um,
Mm.
and so it's like I could easily do 3 hours of Swedish a day, but I haven't because it's like I'm pretty comfortable in my Swedish now. I live a lot of my life passively through Swedish, my computer and all my websites and everything. But like I want to go back to reading a lot in Swedish or whatever. So I think just the constant reminder of focus, and just how I used to be quite dogmatic in that I was like, you have to do it, you have to really put in.
Right.
And the only, it's like I've stopped being like that because I guess I'm pretty comfortable. And it's like, well, comfort is actually a bad thing.
Mm.
Whenever you're comfortable and you've stopped moving forward, kind of thing. So I'm trying to, like I said right at the beginning, I'm trying to find things now to look into through Swedish. It's pretty hard though because it's like there's anything I look up, I'm like, there's a better channel about this. Say it's a YouTube. There's a better channel about this that's in English. Um, but yeah, I've got a few ideas that I won't give away, but
Right.
things that I'm looking to get into, and maybe thinking of starting a Swedish speaking channel as well,
Wow.
to force me so that if when I don't know how to say something, I have to go and find someone who can tell me.
What would you say is your most important characteristic as a language learner?
Probably. Uh, how do you? What's the characteristic called? Like obsessiveness.
Hmm.
Um, like I definitely never would have gotten this far in Swedish if I was one of those people who just kind of gets mildly interested in things. Um, the having something that becomes my thing for like 3 years is an advantage and a disadvantage. But uh, I think in the case of Swedish, at least, it's very much become an advantage in that, like, you can't do like I've probably averaged if we yeah if for the last year I've probably averaged 2.5 hours a day of
Oh, very
Swedish.
nice.
Like you can't do that much and not get at least a bit good. So
No, that's a nice
um,
chunk.
whereas like most people would never do that much because they think they're going to learn a language through like 10 minutes a day or whatever. And like I thought I could do that just like everyone else. I thought, oh, that probably works. But I'm one of those people who goes, well, if 10 minutes a day works, what does 40 minutes a day do? What does 2 hours a day do? Kind of thing. What I don't know if you ended up doing more than me in that week, but like, what is 57 hours in
No,
one
no,
week?
I was perfectly fine with 40.
Oh, okay.
No,
Um, yeah,
I wasn't
I
trying
don't know.
to top it anything. I would just
I
like,
was
man, I want 40 hours, like in the work week, done.
Yeah. So yeah, some people did more than me.
Oh my gosh.
But and again, I don't know if you can hear. It's going to sound bizarre if I say there's a dog barking in the background that you might be. It's super loud to me.
Don't worry
But
about
yeah,
it.
yeah, probably obsessiveness. I don't actually think that I have many other characteristics that really help me as a language learner. I have skills like being able to listen, that like
Mm.
having a quite an acute listening ear. Um, but that's
And
not a
basically, what you
personality
said
trait,
was the answer that I was looking for.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I tweeted something a couple of weeks ago. I said like my best characteristic as a language learner is just that I keep on going. Essentially, my
Mhm.
persistence.
Yeah.
Because I have like an ideal schedule of what I would like to do, like every day, basically. Like I know,
Mm.
but it's quite common that I don't get to all that. But I don't let that get me down. Like I just keep it moving, one foot in front of the other. I'm doing something always. Like I'm moving forward,
Yeah.
and it's just persistency.
Yeah. Yeah. See, I'm actually not persistent.
Are
Well,
you sure?
traditionally, like as a characteristic, I'm not. So that's what I'm trying to get
Mm.
myself to be lately. Because I'm like, imagine how good I would be at all these things, or it's actually not all these things, one of these things like piano or whatever, if I just kept going. Because like I always did piano for like practice piano for like 6 months, and then people were like, you're amazing, and then I just stopped. It's like, imagine if I just kept going that whole time. I'd be a concert pianist by now. So
Oh
that
man.
now I'm just trying to go like this. I can't just keep doing this until I die because I'll never get really good at anything. So persistence is what I'm working on.
I think it was a blessing that I was a runner, and a runner like how I was for so long, from 13 to 22. Like, you know, I'm not even joking. Like, running not only taught, like, can teach me so much about language learning, or has taught me, but just about
Mm,
life. Basically, as a runner, you have a goal, and then you have to put a lot of effort to get that goal. Along the way, you're going to have trials and tribulations. You're going to go down. You have to bring yourself back up and get back on the grind. And
mm,
basically, I did that for 9 years, from being like a 13-year-old like grunt to someone that was respectable and had achieved some respectable things. And I think, man, I just apply that same mentality in life and in language learning, and I can't fail.
mm.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was actually into running for a bit too. But
oh,
the
that was
same
one of
thing.
your things. Oh, come
Yeah,
on,
yeah.
come on.
20, 26. Oh man, I never would have been anywhere near as fast as you though, because I know just because I only did it for like 3 years.
Mm.
I was getting really quite overweight when I was about 27, and I just started running just to lose weight, and then like everything, I just was like, oh, this is what I do now, and so I started running like quite a lot, and then the losing weight just happened anyway um, because I was running so much. But at the sort of 3 or 4 years, and I got kind of again, it got kind of fast for like only having spent that long. Um, but I never got anywhere near like anything that could place in the top 100 of like one of those big races or anything. Um, and there's a fair bit of natural. I think there is quite a lot of natural ability involved. If we're talking about the first 4 years of running, because like it's just I wasn't super heavy, so I wasn't like I got really skinny, and then I had that lightweight advantage on my side and whatever. But and I want to get back into it because I kind of need to. That's not just an interest thing. There's actually a health component there. But I kind of need to see a physio because I've had a bit of a niggle in my ankle for about 6 months now. So yeah, it's not a good idea to go seeing if that'll hold up under running. So I need to see a physio. But just like you were saying, I do need to get back on the horse, even if it involves forking out a lot of money to see a physio and whatever. Like you can't just let that slide.
No. Two last questions. All right. So you studied French and you said goodbye to, excuse me, you said goodbye to French to really study Swedish.
Yep.
In this moment when you made that decision to this point where you are now, have you made the progress that you thought that you would?
More actually. Like I said before, I thought it was just about the time, but I think up until like 99% of like as of a native speaker, I think it's like progress feeds more progress because like we talk about comprehensible input. All input is comprehensible to me now, but some of it more than others. And like I actually, when I first let go of French, I was still struggling to watch a Swedish series with no subtitles. Like it would depend what it was about, but I would really, really struggle. And I just didn't realize how much you just keep going these like deeper and deeper layers to the point. It's not just about being able to understand everything. It's about being able to get references to get like there's nuance, but there's also like people have commented on my videos. They're like, wow, you've taken on Swedish for real when you use our memes in your video because yeah, it turns out that I knew about none of that because I hadn't put the time in and whatever, and that's like an important part of it. Like there's these Swedish viral videos that only went viral in Sweden because they're in Swedish, and it's like all Swedish people know about them. So that's something I didn't even know existed then. I didn't even realize that there was this whole cultural aspect that I was missing out on. I just thought it was a matter of linguistic ability, but it's so much more than that. So what am I trying to say here? The fact that, well, yeah, it's like people talk about Matt's level of Japanese, that he has almost mastered an aspect of Japanese, that is pitch accent, that most non-native speakers don't even realize is a thing. And I think it's the same. Like people think they're good at Swedish, and I hear them and I'm like, yeah, linguistically you're good, but the way you're speaking it doesn't, like I can pick you as a non-native speaker despite myself being a non-native speaker. So it's like, it's not, haven't necessarily mastered some of these things, but I know they're there, and I didn't even know they were there before. I just thought like, yep, I speak Swedish, I speak French. But now I kind of go, well, I know Swedish as well as speaking it. Like I actually know, like people will make jokes and I'll be like, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Like, yeah, so more than I thought possible.
Right. So I think you and I would agree that, well, I think that's, one should never have the goal to be a polyglot, because I think
Hmm.
you need better reasons than that. I think
Hmm.
that if you should happen to be a polyglot, perfect, but the goal should not be that, you know?
Yeah.
Because to really learn a language, you really gotta focus on that
Yeah.
language and let them all add up. I mean, this is the case with, Steve, Luca, we can,
Mhm.
all that.
But even like, and this is no shade at Luca. Like we said good things about him before. So, but even it's like,
Now we can get into
yeah.
the real stuff. We got that out of the way.
But it's like, Luca has admitted that his Swedish isn't where it once was, but also like where it once was is not going to be anywhere near the level that mine is, because like you can't speak 14 languages and have one of them, except for the ones that he uses in his daily life. But like there's just not that many that you can have be like a part of your daily life. I'm sure he has no idea what the Swedish memes that I'm talking about are.
Right, right,
Um,
right, right.
and like there's just lots of things. It's like, and it's not insulting to say that to someone. It's like you can't be fully Italian and fully American and fully French and fully Spanish and fully Portuguese. It's like and however many other languages he speaks. You can almost be like fully American and fully Mexican.
Mhm.
I've spoken to my cousin about this, who says that his son is more bicultural than him. So my cousin's like 40, and uh, his son is he's grown up in Japan and Australia, like almost equal portions of his life, and it's like he says, I've adopted Japanese culture as best I can, but my son is like completely bicultural, like,
Wow.
as in, like, he speaks the languages perfectly, but he'll also like go into a room and know who to address first and stuff in
That's
Japanese.
so
And
interesting.
it's like, whereas for my cousin, that's always like, okay, wait, who do I have to address first? And it's like, you just can't do that for more than two cultures, I would
Right,
say. Yeah.
right. It's so interesting you made that point because, you know, before coming to Mexico, I would have considered myself just American. Like,
Mhm.
I know my dad came from Mexico. I mean, I've got family there, but for me, I just grew up with the American experience, right? But for the last 7 years, you know, like
Mm.
I've lived in Mexico. So now
Yeah.
I have this thing going on where it's like let's say if the States plays Mexico in some event, I would kind of be like, I think I'm going to go for Mexico this time, you know?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like, it's just like this thing of like, oh, now I don't
Yeah.
feel like 100% like American, but at the same time, like, I'm not saying I feel 100% Mexican because like, and I'm not even saying I feel 50-50. Let's say 75-25 or 60-40,
Yeah.
but it's like,
Yeah.
I feel this sensation of being bicultural and quite
Yeah, yeah,
interesting. It's going to be confusing what it'll be like for me going back home because I've lived a lot of my adult life now here in
yeah.
Mexico. So um, anyway, what I was getting with the last thing is,
Yep.
can you see yourself putting yourself through what you've put yourself through in Swedish again with another language? Because if you were, to, if I'm just being honest with you,
Hmm.
I mean, what the hell do I know? I feel that for you, Swedish is done. Excuse me, French is done. Like it's either got to be like some other language, or maybe
Hmm.
just do something else. What do you think about this?
Ooh. Yeah, I, I don't know. I think I at the moment I've kind of been going back to the drawing board and saying like, okay, my dad doesn't live in France anymore. He never really had that higher level of French anyway. Do I really want to, like, it feels like a waste to just let French go,
Mm.
but I didn't really spend that much time on it. Like I've wasted more time on other things in my life. And I do love there's so much stuff I love in French. Like I really do. There's certain YouTube channels I love, and it wouldn't matter if I would watch them if they're in English. Um, and so I kind of want to go back to that just because I know I can enjoy the content, and we know that when you enjoy content, you get good at the language.
Mhm.
Um, but I also going to go, well, do I want to spend this much time learning another language that
Exactly.
has that much in common with English that that, and we're also seeing a lot of French speakers now who speak English to a high level.
Yes, we are.
That didn't used to be the case in the
This is
90s.
true.
No, but now they're starting to have the internet, and you're starting to get adults who have
This is
grown up
so
with the
true.
internet.
We're about the same age, you know, so like I completely know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and you're starting to get like 20-year-old French people who don't even sound very French.
Yep.
Um, so do I want to spend do I want to spend more time? And the other thing is, I'm also thinking a lot about uh, helping people, and like how you actually get a lot, you get a lot more out of your life personally if you help other people, but also you do good for society, of course. And so
Yes.
like, is French, and especially the French of France and of Belgium and or of Canada, is that actually like that? You know, there are other Western first world countries. Now I know that French is spoken in parts of Africa. Okay, so
Africa.
yeah, yeah. But you know, is there a language that I can speak, that I can learn, that will be of more benefit to people who don't speak English? And I don't want to give too much away, but I
Right.
have been thinking about a certain language, and like maybe that's more worth my time. But this time I want to really consider it, and like, you know, what I want to get out of it, and what I think I want to consider it on the basis of what I want to get out of it, and what I could do, what I could help people with, and whatever, rather than like, oh, what resources are available, and this and that. Yeah, so I will kind of want to go back to the drawing board, and I really have no idea. Like, you know, it could be Mandarin, because
Exactly.
there are tons of Mandarin speakers in Australia, like tons and tons and tons of them, and or it could be Arabic for the same reason. But again, like, does that help people? If I help them to learn English here, maybe, but
Yeah.
um, by showing them, like by setting an example, like comprehensible input, this is the level I've achieved in Mandarin. Stop trying to study verb tables, because that's classic. Like especially Chinese people
Yep.
here in Australia. They think you learn English by studying a textbook. So I don't know. I'm not giving anything away, but I have many languages on my peripheral thing, and I also think it's kind of starting to be time to consider it, because it's not that I'm done with Swedish. It's more to the point that I could actually learn another language through Swedish if I
Yep.
wanted to, and so that's kind of where I go. Okay, stop trying to be perfect in one, and think about what I can do.
I mean, right. You know, I, I've wanted to learn Russian for a long time, but of course, you know, I was in Mexico learning Spanish, which I also really liked. You know,
Yeah,
there was a fine line. I told myself,
not too many Russians to speak to in Mexico.
you'd be surprised, but still
Oh,
at the same
okay.
at the same time, right?
Yeah.
But I told myself, man, if I get a C1, and I'm a legit C1, I know that I can just start that language and, you know, just water the Spanish however I
Yeah.
can, right? So for
Yeah.
me, it was a comfortable decision to straight, well, just to go make that transition to Russian.
Yeah. Yeah.
But Lamont, thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure
Yeah.
talking with
No
you,
worries, man.
my friend.
No
Before
worries.
we go, any parting words for everyone listening?
Oof. Say, yeah, don't, we've talked about it here, but don't rush. You don't, you will actually get less than you think out of being able to speak five languages or whatever. All you get is saying that you can do that, really. If you learn them really quickly, like if you can actually speak five languages to a high level, then you might get lots out of that. But
Right.
if you're just doing it to show off, then I guess you can do that, but it's not all it's made out to be, to speak. So just find what you like, find material that you like, and immerse in it, and you'll actually get a lot more out of it that way. Those are my parting words.
All right, then. So we'll see you. Thank you, Lamont.
Thanks, man.